Now, European leaders are meeting today to discuss ways to boost competitiveness so the bloc can keep up with economic rivals like the US and China. The meeting, held at the 16th century Alden Biesen Castle in Belgium, is expected to focus on how to lay the path for European independence. Now, this comes as the European Union faces pressure from the US, China and Russia on a variety of different issues, prompting a rethink of Europe's approach to diplomacy and to trade. Here's a look at some of the challenges the EU leaders could well be discussing today.
This factory in Estonia is producing rare earth magnets, critical for production of electric cars and wind turbines, and for the EU's decarbonisation. It was built in part with funds from the European Union to reduce dependence on China, which dominates critical mineral extraction and refining. This week, EU leaders further discussed diversification of supply chains and how to be more competitive. While the EU Commission is expected to find support in its bid to slash red tape, France's push for a Buy European policy, which prioritises EU-based companies, services and products for public procurement and funding, is already proving to be controversial. It is being described as protectionist. But France argues it simply strengthens European industry at a time trade is being weaponized, and not just by Beijing.
We are at a turning point. We see the pressure coming out from the United States, from China, the risk of Europe falling behind. We will support European actors. Others do it.
As the bloc tries to de-risk not just from China, but also from its ally across the Atlantic, experts say the EU needs to achieve technological and financial sovereignty. They argue it's time for European social media alternatives that follow EU regulations and values and can compete with US's big tech companies. The EU's flagship Digital Services Act has not yet reined in X, a platform that has been accused of amplifying far-right voices.
The interdependence with the United States is quite different from the interdependence that we have with China. Here, it's much more about digital technology and financial technology.
There are also calls for a payment infrastructure that is independent of American financial service providers. Several judges and prosecutors at the International Criminal Court have been cut off by banks and credit card companies after the US imposed sanctions against them. A large chunk of cashless transactions in the EU are carried out via Visa or MasterCard and services like PayPal.
There are two competing ideas here right now. On the one hand, there's a private sector initiative from banks that want to build a competitor to Visa and MasterCard. At the same time, the European Central Bank is pushing forward a proposal for what they call a digital euro, which would be a payment system that is operated by the central bank and therefore also have the same legal status as, for instance, cash.
None of the changes will come easy. But to be more competitive, the countries that make up the world's largest single market need to be united.
DW's Anshel Vora is at Alden Biesen Castle in the Belgian province of Limburg, where the EU leaders are meeting today. Anshel, tell us more about the leaders' priorities in their talks today.
Well, let me just tell our viewers that Chancellor Merz and French President Macron have walked down together to talk to the press, and they are speaking to the press right now. Top priorities are competitiveness, competitiveness, competitiveness. We've been talking to several leaders and officials on the sidelines of this informal summit, and they say that last year the focus was on getting trade deals. This year the focus is going to be on how to make Europe competitive. Some of the suggestions are on the table. There was a paper floated around that DW had access to by Germany, Belgium and Italy, and there the priorities listed say capitals union. What that essentially means is that people in different European countries should be able to invest in each other's countries easily. How to make that process easily. If there's more capital, if there's more money, that helps innovation, that helps startups. This is what the EU needs, according to the understanding of the leaders here. In addition to that, priority is going to be simplifying rules across the board and coming to a unified policy when it comes to energy prices. Industry leaders, businesses are very bothered by a higher rate in energy prices. It's uneven in different countries. Several leaders have spoken about it. That's also going to be on the table.
It sounds very sensible and very good, but the European Union has been talking about this for a very long time. They've been talking about improving competitiveness. So is this going to be any different, do you think?
Well, that's the hope, at least. There is, though, I must say, a sense of urgency here, because in the past, it's sort of been, yes, at every year or so, they would talk about competitiveness, but they were thinking about China. Now they're thinking about Trump. Now they're thinking about, well, that transatlantic relationship, also a key relationship in economic terms, may change, is changing. And in that context, there's a sense of urgency here. Good news today would be if the leaders agree to some sort of a deadline to unleash some of these reforms. And if they agree to that, then perhaps take it up in the summit later in March to finalize it. If there's no deadline, it's still just going to be words.
And just briefly, Anchal, how united are the leaders in their approaches to what they're talking about today?
We see that over the last year or so, there is increasing unity when it comes to the challenge, which is the economy needs to be stronger if security has to be stronger. However, leaders cannot agree to the approach that they should take. Even before this informal retreat, there have been disagreements over, two blocs, one led by Germany in a way and the other led by the French. The French are calling for Eurobonds, common debt. Germany is opposing it. Several others are opposing it, saying that Europe needs to be more competitive, not more protectionist. France is saying others do it. US's policies turn quite protectionist. China's has always been. These are key trading partners. We've got to prefer Europe. We've got to prefer European companies. The liberals here say that is more protectionist, and experts say perhaps not even, in accordance with the trade laws that the EU has agreed to. However, as I said right at the start, the French president and the German chancellor have walked down together to at least send a message of unity.
We'll leave it there. Anchal Vora at the EU leaders meeting in Flanders, Belgium. Anchal, thank you.